And if you go into public service, if you're like Etta and you go into teaching, for example, after 10 years, whatever's remaining on your debt will be forgiven. So that will give young people a much better head start, because everybody here, if they haven't experienced it personally, somebody in your family has finished college with huge amounts of debt that they're having trouble repaying. I know Michelle and I did too. So there are a whole range of things that we're trying to do, working with colleges, community colleges, universities, to try to improve our education system. One of the things that I announced this week was we're really going to focus on science and math, because that's where our young people, I think, are falling the most behind. And we've made a commitment that we're going to hire, over the next couple of years, 10,000 new science and math teachers. And we're going to work with the schools to help redesign their math and science curriculums so that we start boosting. I want to get to the point where we're number one in science and math. And I also want to make sure, by the way, that that's true for all students. Because I'll be honest with you, African-American students, Latino students, we're doing worse in science and math than the overall average. So America's at 21st and 25th, but if you actually looked at performance of Latino and African-American students, it would be even lower. And that's inexcusable, because that's the fastest growing portion of our population. That's our future. That's our future workforce. And so we've got to have the most skilled, most highly trained workers in the world, and this is what we're going to be focusing on over the next couple of years. Now, last point I'm going to make, and then I'm just going to open it up, because I promised I wouldn't give a long speech. This election coming up in November is going to offer a choice on a whole range of different issues. And this issue of education gives you a sense of the choice that I think Democrats are trying to make and the choice that the Republicans are trying to make. The Republicans recently put out what they call their Pledge to America. And it basically outlined what their priorities are. Their number one economic priority is retaining $700 billion tax breaks to the wealthiest 2% of the country, millionaires and billionaires mostly. We'd have to borrow the $700 billion because we don't have it. Right? We got these deficits and debt. So we'd have to borrow the $700 billion from China or the Saudis or whoever is buying our debt. And then we'd pass out, on average, a $100,000 check to people who are making $1 million up to more than $1 billion. That's their main economic plan. And when you ask them, well, how would you pay for some of this stuff, they don't really have good answers. But one way they would pay for it is to cut back our education spending by 20% and eliminate about 200,000 Head Start programs and reduce student aid to go to college for about 8 million students. That's one of their answers. And I just have to say, look, China, that's not the decision they're making about their education system and their kids. South Korea, that's not the decision that they're making about their kids. I was in Shanghai, and I talked to the mayor. He said, you know, teachers are the most respected of professions, as much as doctors or engineers, and they're paid, you know, to reflect how much we value them. I was in South Korea, and I was talking to the president having lunch, and he said, you know, my biggest problem in education is the parents are so demanding. They're insisting that I ship in English people from the United States and other English-speaking countries because they want all their kids to learn English by the time they're in third grade. I mean, that's their mindset. That's the competition that they're in. So they're not cutting back on education right when we know that that's going to be the most important thing in determining our success over the long term. And we can't either. And so I just want everybody to think about those kinds of issues as you go into the polling place in November. Who's going to prioritize our young people to make sure they've got the skills they need to succeed over the long term? Nothing's going to be more important in terms of our long-term success. All right? So with that, let me just open it up to any comments or questions people may have about anything. I talked a lot about education, but people may have a whole bunch of different interests here, and I'd love to hear from you. And we've got mics so that everybody can hear your questions. Okay? Let's start with this young lady right here. And introduce yourself again, even though I got all your names, I'm getting older, so it's harder to remember these things.
Good morning, Mr. President. Welcome to Albuquerque. My name is Catarina Sandoval Tonini, and I have two questions for you this morning, if I may.
Sure.
The first question has to do with the changing demographics here in our neighborhood as well as in the public school system. I grew up here in this neighborhood. I'm raising my own family here. I work at a local public school here. And I have seen over the years firsthand how recent immigrants have revitalized our local economy. They start small businesses, they hire locally, they live within the community. How do you envision a comprehensive immigration reform as one measure towards America's economic recovery and long-term vitality?
I have consistently, even before I was a presidential candidate, but when I was a U.S. Senator and when I was running for U.S. Senator, said that we have to move forward on comprehensive immigration reform. Bill Richardson and I have had a lot of conversations about this. This is a nation of immigrants. It was built on immigrants. Immigrants from every corner of the globe who brought their talent and their drive and their energy to these shores because this was the land of opportunity. Now, we're also a nation of laws, so we've got to make sure that our immigration system is orderly and fair. And so I think Americans have a legitimate concern if the way we've set up our immigration system and the way we are securing our borders is such where people just kind of come and go as they please. Well, that means that folks who are waiting, whether it's in Mexico City or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Warsaw, Poland, if they're waiting there filling out their forms and doing everything legally and properly, and it takes them 5 years or 6 years or 10 years before they're finally here and made legal, well, it's not fair to them if folks can just come and ignore those laws. So what I think is so important to do is for us to both be a nation of laws and affirm our immigrant traditions. And I think we can do that. So what I've said is, look, yes, let's secure our borders. Yes, let's make sure that the legal immigration system is more fair and efficient than it is right now, because if the waiting times were lessened, then a lot of people would be more prone to go through a legal route than through an illegal route. Let's make sure that we're cracking down on employers who are taking advantage of undocumented workers to not pay them overtime or not pay them minimum wage or not give them bathroom breaks. Let's make sure that we're cracking down on employers to treat all workers fairly. And let's provide a pathway to citizenship for those who are already here, understanding that, they broke the law, so they're going to have to pay a fine and pay back taxes. And I think learn English, make sure that they don't have a criminal record. There are some hoops that they're going to have to jump through, but giving them a pathway is the right thing to do. Now, unfortunately, right now, this is getting demagogued. A lot of folks think it's an easy way to score political points, is by